Bruce Pearl on Friday after Tennessee held off Ole Miss. I'm sorry, after Auburn held off Ole Miss, went onto the SEC Network desk in the postgame interview and said, "My guards aren't P words." And yes, I'm referring to the female anatomy. Now, I'm not one of those people that's like, "Oh, decorum, don't cuss, you need to behave in a certain way." I don't want to be one of those people.
I'll tell you right now. Whoa, let me stop you there. As a parent, and you may change here in 7-8 years when your son starts watching sporting events with you, I will tell you that I find that offensive because I've been in the car and somebody said something like that on the radio with my kids in the back that were 8 and 6 years old. So I do find that using that word in and of itself offensive.
And that's fine too. If you do, that's totally fine. I guess the thing that bothers me the most is Bruce Pearl, in my opinion, meticulously did that because he knew it would draw attention to himself. It wasn't like he was speaking off the cuff. Bruce Pearl loves to do things that give himself attention. And then he did this over the weekend. I'm going to play the clip, Dave. Now, keep in mind, Bruce Pearl, Auburn has lost 3 of 4. And they barely beat Ole Miss. So he was asked a perfectly legitimate question: is there panic setting in? Because you would be.
And I want to say this to your point. He did about every national radio show you could imagine last week. Go ahead.
Yeah, he did. And so while asked if panic was setting in, here's what he says. And you guys tell me if this is an unfair response. I think it is.
3 of the last 4. Is this kind of a flush it, move forward? Is there panic at all? What do you look at with this?
Man, I'm really glad you asked me that question. We lost to Alabama, Tennessee, and at Texas A&M. Yeah, we're panicked. That's a real softball. We lost to some great teams. We lost the buzzer against Alabama. We had possessions here, so yeah, we're panicked. I can hardly wait till next weekend and start playing again. Just get me here. Let's get to Sunday. Let's find out where we're going. Let's find out who we're playing, and let's get back to work. I'm looking forward.
Okay, I think he's genuinely offended there by the question. And I think it was unfair of him to belittle the reporter about the question. That's what I have a problem with there. So I guess I have a problem with Pearl's antics over the past week for different reasons than you. 1, I found offensive. 2, he's belittling a reporter that makes probably about 1/20th of what Bruce Pearl makes. That's what I find offensive in both instances.
The latter one, I agree with you. I'm very offended by how Bruce Pearl treated the reporter there. Because let's be honest, Dave, that was a perfectly legitimate question. Okay?
Oh, yeah. Headed into postseason play, you've lost 3 of 4?
Yeah. And by the way, he gassed it.
Actually, can you do me a favor? Can you play it again? Can we hear the question? I want to hear specifically how the question's phrased. And I'll tell you how I would have handled it.
3 of the last 4. Is this kind of a flush it, move forward? Is there panic at all? What do you look at with this?
Okay, now to defend Bruce a second, I wouldn't have probably used the word panic. But at the end of the day, what's your job as a reporter, Caleb? It's to get a great quote. So like there have been several times he got a good quote. So there have been several times where Derek Dooley in particular kind of came at me, and I was glad because I got a better quote. I don't care. And people go, oh man, that Dooley, he's going to win championships at Tennessee. He really got you. And I'm like, no, he's probably not. And that's fine. So, I mean, maybe the reporter is fine with that. And he asked an incendiary word like panic to get something out of Bruce. If he did that, it's very well thought out. I don't think he did. And I probably wouldn't have used that word. I would have used concern, but I wouldn't have gotten as good of an answer. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with the belittling. And I guess theoretically, I don't mind it because he does give the good quotes. But like, let's think about this. They lost at Texas A&M. First of all, Texas A&M is a fringe top 25 team, and they lost by 11. If you're the number 1 overall seed, you shouldn't lose on the road to a fringe top 25 team by double digits. Then when they lost to Alabama, they lost at home. He says we lost at the buzzer. Again, if you're the number 1 overall seed, you don't lose at home late in the year, right? And then they lost to Tennessee. Yes, a very good team, but Tennessee was the 4th seed in the SEC tournament. They lost on a neutral court. Again, you don't lose on a neutral court. So only one of these losses was at home. And most notably, Ole Miss, they only beat Ole Miss by 5. That's their only win over the last 4 games, and Ole Miss isn't even a top 25 team. And that wasn't a road game, so they have every reason to ask, are you panicked? It takes me to, and this is why I realized, I think he was calculating right there. He's like, if I'm sarcastic, it'll get me attention. And I want to point this out. When Bruce Pearl did it at Tennessee, everybody praised it and people loved it. But that's partially because, as you know, Dave, Tennessee needed that in 2005. They needed someone to like generate a splash. They needed to paint the chest guy, all of that. But I think we forget Bruce Pearl did some things even that during that time that was self-serving. Did you know his first year at Tennessee, he got thrown out of his son's high school basketball game?
I do remember that.
And and people thought that was so cool. I'm like, who goes out of their way to get thrown out of a high school basketball game? I mean, he just loves drawing attention to himself for drama. And that's where I'll say you remember Saban's lash out at reporters a lot, right?
Yes.
I think a lot of times when Saban was doing it, it was about, he had method to the madness, didn't he?
I felt like he was pushing an agenda. Now,
yeah,
I do believe Bruce Pearl is about bringing more attention to his program. And I do agree with you that I don't think he accidentally said the P word on the SEC network. I think that was well formulated. But when he was at Tennessee, everybody loved the fact that he was bringing attention to the program. I mean, let's be honest. When he painted his chest, he looked like a goofball. I mean, nobody would want Josh Heupel to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think, again, when Bruce Pearl was first doing that,
I would pay to see it.
Well, when Bruce Pearl was first doing it at Tennessee had a low profile. He had a low profile. They needed a splash. Ever since he's been at Auburn, particularly the last 5 years, he hasn't needed that type of buzz. He does it because I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say it out here, guys. It's the same way he paints his chest at Auburn games sometimes in football games. At the same time, like when he did that rap that he did for Tennessee when he was on the basketball team this 5th year at Tennessee. He's been in a midlife crisis since his late 40s. Ever since he got divorced, he's been in even before he got divorced. He's been in a midlife crisis. He wishes he could go back to his college.
You seen the lady he's with now?
Oh, yeah. Like the one that's like half his age.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that a midlife crisis or is he moving on?
I think he's been in a midlife crisis for 20 years now. I do. I think he's been in a midlife crisis. Bruce Pearl has been in a midlife crisis for 20 years. And it's cringy to watch somebody in his 60s doing it like, oh, I'm in my 60s and I'm going to say the P word on SEC Network because I'm so rebellious. Oh, my God. And it's like, and then the sarcastic response to the reporter was like, it was like he was acting like a fan there. And it was, I think he may have been offended at the question, but again, it was such a legitimate question. At least I'll say this. Sometimes, Dave, when Nick Saban went off on reporters, I'm going to say this as somebody who was a reporter myself, and you were too. Some of those questions were really stupid. It's like they felt they were starstruck to be in a press conference and like, I just want to ask a question. And it was like, the question made no sense. Like, I'll never forget when, just a quick one on National Signing Day one year, one guy is like, Nick, you guys only signed one player today. Why were you so quiet? And Nick Saban's like, well, because we signed 25 guys already. Like, and he literally said, do you know math? And I mean, that's a fair question. That's a dumb question. All due respect to that. You were starstruck. You don't ask a question like that. This was a legitimate question.